B'shus Lamad Asra, Harav Katz, it's Rebbitzin. It's really a remarkable item of Torah. It's really an honor to be here. It's an honor. It's my honor. It's wow. And we're not here just for anything. We're here for the biggest accomplishment of life. Ashrei mi shebo lekan v'talmudei biyadai. Fortunate is he who comes to the next world, the Talmudei biyadai. It doesn't say with a pushka biyadai, a tefillin biyadai, Shabbos biyadai. The VIP of the next world is somebody who comes with Talmudei biyadai. It really is a very big simcha. And I also I detect, the Gemara Megillah, the Megillah tells us there's something even greater than learning Torah. Even greater. What could be greater? Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. So when you're called up for an aliyah, Yamaid, it's called an aliyah. Why is it called an aliyah, a step up? So most people will tell you, Rabbi Weiss, don't you know, you go to any old shul that the bima is elevated. That's why it's called an aliyah. That's true. That's not the main reason. The main reason is because the Gemara Megillah tells us that Kavod Torah is Adaf Melimud Torah. So even if, let's say, you're sitting and you're learning, Ben Gavra Legavra, you're looking into the Chumash, you're looking what the Chizkuni has to say, and then they call, Ya'amaid. Whatever you're doing, it's an aliyah, because you're going to give Kavod HaTorah B'Rabim, making a bracha on the Torah. One thing I see the love that you have for your Rav, and the honor that you have for him. That's even greater than Limud HaTorah. This Kavod HaTorah is even greater than Limud HaTorah. So Ashrecha. You know, the Rav made a hadron. That hadron is a real tefillah, because the Rav said 3 times, Hadron Aloch, Talmud Bavli. Right? Sechtas Nida v'Talmud Bavli. That's 7.5 years times 3. It's another 30 years. That's a big tefillah. So they asked, why not 30 years, 23 years, whatever it is, a quarter of a century? So they asked, why don't you say B'li Neder? I first heard this question from Rav Ephraim Greenblatt. He used to send out to Rabbanim faxes with Shilas. And he sent me a fax, why don't we say Adonalach B'li Neder? So I saw that Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld asked the question, and Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach asked the question. And they both say the same thing, that since we're not planning to make a neder, it's covered with the Hineni Meiser Moidah that we make Erev Rosh Hashanah when we say Ataras Nedarim. That's what Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld answers, and what Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I wanted to suggest another possibility. Hadron Aloch is not a neder. Hadron Aloch is a tefillah. We hope to be able to return to you. It's a tefillah. How it's a good tefillah? Haraya, the whole thing is a tefillah. Harevna, Yiratzim Ufanecha, Hashem Elokeinu. So I want to join the Rav's Hadron with a tefillah that we should be able, with Gesundte Cup, at least 3 more times be able to return. Why do we say 3 times? Hadron Aloch, Hadron Aloch, Hadron Aloch. Why 3 times? Because to know something, you have to learn it 4 times. Where do we see that? We see that from Avaseder. Shnai Mikra, Ve'echet Targum, and you hear it in Shul, that's 4 times. So we learn it, and then Hadron Allah, Hadron Allah, Hadron Allah. By the way, that's why you'll find, in almost any Gemara you use, you'll find that on the page, Rashi and Tosfos sticks out 4 lines. On every page, unless the page doesn't have Tosfos maybe. But otherwise, on every page, in any Gemara, Rashi and Tosfos, before it becomes narrow, it sticks out 4. Why? To tell you to do it 4 times. So I wanted to share with you a thought that I had. One of the Siyumim on Thursday night in Lakewood, my Mechutin, Reb Shlomo Yeager, asked me a kasha on the Hadron. It says that we shouldn't forget you, and you shouldn't forget us, right? Lo nisnashe minach, lo sisnashe minach, lo nisnashe minan, lo ba'alma hadein, lo ba'alma das. We shouldn't forget you in this world, we shouldn't forget you in the next world. So Pasha Kasha. What does it mean we shouldn't forget you in the next world? There's no shikha in the next world. If this would be a Sheva Brachas, Mamash looks like a Sheva Brachas. If this would be a Sheva Brachas, we would say, Kisamechacho yitzircha began eden mikedem. Right? What are we saying? That the Chassan and Kala should be happy, like Hashem made happy Adam and Chav and Gan Eden. What do you mean Adam and Chav and Gan Eden? There was nobody there. There was no relative, there was no nothing. What's the Teretz says before the Chait, there was no shikha. The only reason we have shikha is to cope with death, to cope with the hardships of life. In the next world, there's no shikha. If in the next world there's no shikha, then why should we say Loi ba'alma dasi? We're not going to forget it in the next world. We don't need a tefillah. So I wanted to suggest the following answer. And that is, we say to Hashem, please Hashem, let me never regret my learning. Because if Chas v'Shalom we're toya al rishaynus, we could lose it, lost it, lovely. You know, they say over that Rav Steinman said about Ben Gurion, that could you imagine the schus he had that he made an exemption of the draft for Yeshiva Bachim? Imagine the millions of hours of Torah that could be accrued to his account. But he says he's afraid that he heard that he regretted it later on in life. And maybe he lost all those millions of hours. A person should never regret their learning. And that's important also for the women to understand. Sometimes a woman says, yeah, my husband goes to the Daf Yomi. You know, I wish he would have been home all these years. You know, I wish we could have gone to more Vurts. You know, I wish he wouldn't have been so busy. He's always running out. Friday night, we have company, the kids are home, he's running out. You know, never regret a minute of your husband's learning. Because the Olam Haba that the women get when their husbands go to learn, and they're mechazik zayin their husbands. The women, you know, you ever go to an airport and people are waiting on these long lines, and then all of a sudden there's 2 uniformed airport personnel flanking a man, and they take him right through a small little door straight onto first class. Diplomatic pouch, VIP treatment. The women that are wives, mothers of Daf Yomi champions, they will have VIP treatment l'neitzach netzachim. It's never regret a second. For us, learning is always the best decision. I always remember at Maisa I had in yeshiva, I was in 12th grade. I wasn't even in Beis Medrash yet, in Yeshiva Staten Island, Ramos's Yeshiva. This is going back to 1974. And there was a very wealthy boy that became a chassan, and he was making a big fancy wedding in Marina Del Rey, and he had 2 coach buses downstairs, and he invited the whole yeshiva. So, a Marina Del Rey, very good food. So everyone decided to go. I said, I don't even know the chassan. I couldn't justify leaving yeshiva. I just couldn't justify what for stuffed cabbage. And I didn't like the yeshiva food. Yeshiva had good food, but I didn't. I was a fine schmecker, Hungarian kid. I didn't. So I didn't go. It seems to me I was the only person that made that decision. So I'm sitting in the Beis Medrash empty, feeling very sorry for myself. Really, I'm sitting there, I'm hungry, I'm feeling very sorry for myself. And Rav Chaim Mintz, Shlita, the Manal, passes by. Obviously he was delayed. So I had half a mind to ask him for a ride. He peeks into the Beis Medrash to see why the lights are on. And then he sees me. And I think he saw on my face that I wasn't a happy camper. So he looked at me and he smiled at me. And this lesson, 1974, right? It's many years ago. This lesson is worth much more than the stuffed cabbage. I'll never forget what he told me. He said, Rav Shach told him once that if you have a question what to do, and you decide you're going to learn, that's a decision that you'll never regret in life. It's a big yesod. People that come to learn, it's a decision you'll never regret in life. Power of Daf Yomi. Power of Daf Yomi. Tell you a personal story. Actually, some of you might have read it because it was printed in the Hasidim book that they gave out. But it's a personal story by me, even if you heard it, but you're hearing it from me directly. When I gave shir in the Daf in the 14th Avenue Aguda, this is before the cell phone. One of our daughters, our oldest daughter, Chani, she was 6 years old, and she started bleeding in the bathroom and didn't stop bleeding. So they called me through Hatzalah. At that time, the only person in the shir that had a phone was Reb Shmuel David Friedman. He had one of these huge contraptions. I called home, I stopped the shir, ran home, and after 3 days, they didn't know what was wrong with her. They finally diagnosed her in Baby's Hospital, Columbia Presbyterian, as having had a E. coli virus, which kills a lot of people, Rahman al-Islam. And she had something called hemolytic uremic syndrome. I can tell you now, she's married with kids, so I can tell you. But it won't shut the shidduch. Shut down her kidneys, we had to do dialysis, we had to give her blood transfusions. And for 5.5 weeks, we had 4 other babies at home, but 5.5 weeks I lived in Columbia Presbyterian. And they came with a car to Washington Heights. Every night they brought me to the shir, and then they brought me back to the hospital. I never saw the house. And I used to prepare by her bed, in ICU, in step down. I used to prepare the daf. I believe we were learning Psachim then. I believe we were learning the Karbanos in Psachim. And Baruch Hashem, after 5.5 weeks, the virus left like it never came. And every day we used to say in the schus of the Mesiras Nefesh for Daf Yomi, because when I left, they sent over every night 2 Bachrim from YU to stay so that the family shouldn't be alone. Those Bachrim are Azedas now. A year later, we made a Suda Seidah. A year later. And I told my Rebbetzin, you know, people like a gematria. What's the gematria of Chana Weiss? We spell, our tradition is to spell Weiss, Vav, Vav, Yud, Yud, Samar. Chana Weiss is exactly the gematria Daf Yomi. Exactly. The koyach of Daf Yomi, which is every day, Torah, is magne o matzle, it's kisris b'fnei aparaniyos. It's such a protection for the family. Those that learn Daf Yomi, if you're with Rabbi Katz, then many of you learned Daf Yomi many times. Many times. Some of you might feel, you know, Daf Yomi, okay, BTDT, been there, done that. You know, I started again this year, today. And it amazes me looking at the Gemara for 5 minutes, I see things that I never saw before. It's amazing. Do you know I never noticed such a Pasha Tekasha? Why do we start Shas Me'emosai Kairina Shema Ba'arvin? Say, Kairina Shema B'shoshak Mishoshak Han Nichlas Lachem T'rumasan. Why do we have to say Me'emosai? Same Talmud Halacha. You know, the kasha never bothered me. But the teretz is probably from the Haggadah Shel Pesach. And that is, we do things with a style of a kasha and a teretz, because when people hear a kasha, they get interested, they remember it better. But look at the first line of Shas. Of course, I don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you how many secrets are embedded in the Heilige words. Do you know that Me'ei Masai in Atbash is Me'ei Masai? You know that? If when you do the Gematria, Aleph equals Taf and Beis equals Shin, Me'ei Masai is exactly backwards in Atbash. You look at the word. The Yud is Mem and the Taf is Aleph. It's exactly backwards. You know why? Because as soon as you finish, you start again. That's the way it works. Or one of my favorite thoughts. I love this word. You know, it's called Torah Shebal Peh because it used to be, I know it's a little easier now. When Rabbi Katz started, I don't know, Rabbi Katz, you had Gemaras when you started? It was a long time ago when I started. My yichus is I said when I started there was no art scroll. When I started the daf, the English Gemara was the Sansino. Talmud Yishalmi Shkolim had nothing. I remember when Rebbe Teitelbaum wanted people to say for Daf Yishalmi Shkolim, he didn't have a lot of customers because everybody wanted to fall back to have something in English. At that time, Yishalmi Shkolim had nothing. I also remember when Rebbe Teitelbaum called me up. I wasn't a regular for Daf because I was saying a daf, So to say a daf, he always wanted things way in advance. To say a daf and do it, he had to have it exactly 51 minutes, and he wanted it many weeks in advance. I couldn't do 2 places at the same time. But he called me up and he said, Rabbi Weiss, I need 3 blat. So I said, Eli Olav Hashem, the father, the pioneer of everything that came after Kalalash and Torah, anytime that came, he was the tata. So Eli, you want 3 blat? 3 blat? No. So I didn't even tell you which 3 blat. I said, Eli, if you're calling me for 3 blat, it's kinim. He said, yeah. So I said, no. He said, what do you mean no? I said, you want it in 51 minutes without pictures, and you want it yesterday. He says, nobody wants to do it. At that time, nobody, included Rav Altusky and Rabbi Rabowski and Rav Yitzhak Gizbi, Olav Shalom, and you know who did it? You know who did it? And he did it like off the cuff. Rav Belsky, Olav Shalom. Rav Belsky ended up doing it. Rav Belsky did it like. I'm almost finished, don't worry. Almost finished. No, you could understand, this is one of my favorite subjects. Daf Yomi. Daf Yomi is one of my favorite subjects. I want to tell you something. If a person has a shir, he goes to a Gemara shir, Rabbi Weiss's Chumash shir, a Navi shir. That doesn't become the center of your life. But a Daf Yomi shir becomes the very center of your life. You have to figure out, what are you going to learn on Purim? Shushan Purim. B'dika night. Yom Kippur. Tisha B'Av. The Siddharim. When are you going to learn? During the Sheva Brachas of your children. My son, this Thursday night, made a Siyum on Shavuos. What's happened to Siyum on Shavuos? He's finishing Shas with the Daf Yomi, but he was sitting Shiva during 7 blot of Shavuos. He had to make up the 7 blot of Shiva. When you learn like that, then mamish it comes alive. Ki heim chayenu v'yorech yameinu. That's the meaning of Ki heim chayenu. It's our life. That's what Daf Yomi is. It's our life. Now for those who need chizuk, I'd love to do it, but it's overwhelming. I believe that Rav Meir Shapiro, his greatest chiddush in the Chotke, the Rebbe's greatest chiddush, Zecher Tzadikim U'Kedoshim L'Bracha, Schusim Yogen Aleinu. There's a famous kasha from Chassam Sofer. It says, Tisha mi yoidea. Who knows 9? Tisha ani yoidea. I know 9. Tisha yarchei leida. 9 months of pregnancy. 9 months of pregnancy? You're putting that together with the 4 imais and the 3 tatas and the 2 luchas and the 5 chumash and the 6 mishnah and the 7 is Shabbos and the 8 is a milah, and 9 is 9 months of nausea? Huh? It's not even a Yiddish azach. The Goyim also have Tisha Yarchei Leida. Some Sefer says it's the 9 months that a baby learns Kol HaTorah Kula B'mei HaImai. And then the Malach comes and gives a strike over here. But it's only forgotten consciously. In the subconscious, it's there. Mayim amukim eitza b'lev ish. Ish svunos. Yidlena. Why did Rabbi Shem do that? I believe Rameir Shapiro, the Chartke Rebbe, they said that there's no such thing as I'm a Kilim Yid. I'm an Ein Yaakov Yid. I'm a Mishnah Yid. Everybody learned B'mei Ha'imai Kol Hashas Kulai. Every single person has the yechelis to do it. Especially if you have a Rebbe like Leibel Katz. No, really. Especially if you have a Rebbe who knows how to keep people awake, who knows how to explain something. You know, the trick of a successful Maggid Shir is it has to be Dvarim HaYotzim Min HaLev. By Rav Katz, he's heitzik in the Torah. It means so much to him. So it's Nichnosim L'Lev. We said Hadrolach's Talmud Bavli. We didn't say Shas. Because Shas is Shisha Siddharim. We didn't finish Shisha Siddharim. Would you believe that people that learned Daf Yomi maybe 5 times never learned Masechtas Idyas? Could you believe that? I know, because I was first 50 years old when I learned Masechtas Idyas the first time. I said a shir on Mishnah Yomis. That's the first time I learned Idyas. I couldn't believe it. Idyas is the Idyas Shabbat Idyas. And learn it. It's an amazing thing. I'm embarrassed to say it, you know. I'm embarrassed to say, but I'm saying, you know, I learned a little bit. I never learned it. I believe that it would be nice if we added to the Daf Yomi program Idyas and Pirkei Avos. I think it would do wonders. Imagine the whole world learning Pirkei Avos during the Daf Yomi. Imagine what it would do. I believe it would be a nice thing. But many of us should think perhaps we should also make a seder to learn Mishnayos, so that we learn Zram and Taras, and that way we could say not just Talmud Bavli, but Shisha Siddharim. I want to conclude. It's such an honor to be in the presence of such a Olam HaTorah. I want to conclude. Train yourself when you sit down to learn. Before you sit down, say, I have in mind to be Mekayim the mitzvah Dibarta Bam. Ran says in Masechtas Nedarim, that's the mitzvah Sasei the Reis of Liman HaTorah. Then you're learning Torah Lishma. And Rameir says, Kol aloyim Torah Lishma zeichel edvarim harbe. Pray every morning in Birchas HaTorah in Harevna to have the cheshek and the geschmack of learning. Some people, they come to a Daf Yomi, look, I gotta do the Daf. Other people want to do the Daf. There has to be a cheshek. It's not always natural. You have to daven for it. When we bench Rosh Chodesh, we ask Hashem for Chaim Aruchim. Why do we ask for Chaim Aruchim? Why don't we ask for Chaim Shel Chodesh? Tefasta Meruba Le Tefasta. Next month we'll ask again. Rabbi said the teretz is that we shouldn't have this month any scares, any dizziness, any lumps, any sharp pains that would threaten our knowledge that we have ahead of us a Chaim Aruchim. The way to have that is to say, Eibishter. Lahavdil by the Goyim, they commit themselves, they're Yankee fans, this is going to be their season. We commit ourselves to 7.5 years. Who does that? Who commits something for 7.5 years? So Rabbeinu Shalom, please Rabbeinu Shalom, I should have the Shalom bias. I should have the Parnasa berevach v'chavod. I should have the Gesund in the Menuchas HaNefesh, that I should be able to, without any problem, learn my Daf Yomi in the next 7.5 years without any problems. In the name of the Marda Asra, Rabbeinu Shalom should give us that Hatzlach and Ruchnius and Gashmias, that, as Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said in Madison Square Garden when he started Brachas, Hamaschil b'mitzvah oimrim lo ligmar. And by the way, if anybody wants to chazer the daf, I'm saying a daf tonight at 9:30 at 5311 New Utrecht Avenue. Anybody wants to chazer? Maybe we zeicha that all of us with gesund should gather for such gesunte simchus under the leadership of the Marda Asra, Ad Bias Kel Tzedek B'mher V'yameinu.